Should we start with a couple that we've got in the chat, Lauren? I can see.
Yep, so we've got a question from Barry around why Field 2, which is closest to the rugby field, wasn't considered as the starting space, considering that's where the sewage pump will be built, and it would cause less effect to the community with entry coming from Ohakune and Radahi. So
pass it to you, Giles.
Yeah, the point we've decided to start on is the logical point from a roading connection, because the roading connection is Data Drive, and we're not going to build a whole pile of road to get to Field 2 that's unnecessary. The pump station can be remote from the current part of the development, but it will be incorporated into the total development.
I just have a follow-up on that, if I may.
Sure.
Just interested in Clive from Rapehu's point of view, if you guys have any input to that, and how you feel, about the subdivision being so close to existing properties and the Carrot Park, and what your view is on it having been on the other side of the rugby field.
Renee, do you want me to answer?
Sorry, Clive. Yes. Apologise. Yes, go for it, Clive. Yep.
Hi, Barry. Good to talk to you again. Look, we are relying on the expertise of Kainga Ora for the development of the site. This is their bread and butter. Council is not a property developer. So the first answer is we rely on their advice. We want houses. We want, safe, warm houses in Ohakune, and this site was made available for it. So the absolute engineering details of it, we rely on others to help us on that.
But you didn't have any sway on asking for that to be done or anything like that. Like, that would be the logical solution, right, for least disruption to neighbouring properties that aren't very happy about this.
Well, I think Giles is, and as I said, it's more of that you're talking about developing a site. We're not property developers. We just want housing available for people in Ohakune.
So you want housing at the expense of your ratepayers. You don't really care about your ratepayers. You just care about putting houses there.
Hey Barry, I'm just mindful.
I'll stop there.
There is a lot of questions to get through. So, and look, appreciate your comments. And I know that you and I have had a lot of discussion around, and more than happy to keep that conversation open outside of this forum. But I am mindful there are a lot of questions coming through.
Yeah, Lauren, you're probably going to get a lot of support for Barry's viewpoint on this from other residents in the Snowmass region. He's got a valid point there about the concerns, and it's going to come from basically most of the residents within this area.
Sonia here, we concur. We really like the way that Barry's actually been approaching things, and we echo the concerns and the issues, and we feel as though we haven't been heard. It's really frustrating. And I think I'd also say it's one thing about the pragmatism of the urban development. It's another thing about taking into consideration this really critical taonga from our perspective of the Carrot Park and what this actually brings into the community. It's not just about doing a development. So I think that his comment about the second field is absolutely quite correct. It might be practical, but it's not necessarily the best solution for the community and what the community want and need.
Thanks, Sonia. Appreciate your comments. Lauren, again, I'm just mindful, I can see the chat going.
Absolutely. So there has been a question whether this is going ahead regardless of the community concerns, or is it still in the consultation process?
Yeah. And look, I'll just touch on this and I'll let my colleagues jump in. So we are not in a consultation phase here. So as Giles has mentioned, we've lodged our resource consent for the subdivision and the infrastructure. We have a open, transparent, meaningful engagement process. But like any other developer, we don't have a requirement to consult as such, but we wanted to make sure that we did come out and have that opportunity to connect with Kainga Ora, Ngati Rangi and our council colleagues. So we're in that process now. And what
about the jobs in Ohakune?
Yep. So I understand the growth is happening. You know, I refer to somebody actually sent me a really awesome link today, and maybe Clive, you might want to touch on this around the cycle tracks and how you guys are trying to, how council is trying to look at improving that amenity to bring more people through to Ohakune. Did you want to touch on that, Clive?
Yeah, if I can. I think it's just, Ohakune is a really important area. It's got a lot of potential. There is another body called the Ohakune, or Future Ohakune, which we're doing with the businesses, the community, you know, Ngati Rangi again, you know, Dave Scott's a big part of it, and, you know, Christy and other people involved. What we recognised is Ohakune is a jewel, but it is growing. You know, the REL thing with the ski field, we believe is just a short-term issue. We believe there is a future there. We also believe that we needed all year round opportunities to make sure the economy is stronger. So we, again, with government help, we've been, you know, developing the cycle trail. And again, that's with locals and with the iwi. So we're looking at it as a whole picture. We're planning for it to grow because it already was growing. But what we also recognized is because of the nature of the business, there was some types of housing that the market wasn't responding to. So hence the reason of those three groups: a little bit of social, public housing, a little bit of affordable, you know, first home buyers, and affordable workers accommodation. Those were the needs that weren't being addressed, and that's why we went to government to say, can you help us? So the Ohakune is a great place. We're refreshing, you know, the centre, so we're investing in the infrastructure of it. We're also making it more all year round economy, and providing housing is really important. We're not competing with other developers. They're addressing a different market than we're looking at with this one. And we're confident that, you know, Ohakune will continue to grow and be a great place.
Our issue is the placement of where you're looking to do it. That's a big concern.
Thanks, Barry.
I think when we looked at the future of Ohakune, there's lots of areas where growth can occur, and this is not the only place. This was the bit of land that we had that we could influence. A lot of the other land is in other people's hands. For us to go to government, that was part of our partnership. It had to be our land. It had to be what they called spade ready to be able to use it, and that's why we couldn't look at other bits of land.
I'm interested to know if any decisions have been made at this stage whether this is going to be a notifiable consent and that the neighbours are going to be notified about it and have an opportunity to voice their opinions on it.
Giles, I might just put this one to you.
Yeah, that is still to be determined because the independent planner is making their assessment, and depending on what they decide, whether they feel it needs to be notified or not. So it will come down to their interpretation of the application and the mitigations proposed in it and so forth to make their decision. So that's not made yet.
And I'm sure that there's a number of people that are on this Zoom meeting who have properties near this development would consider that the impact would be more than minor. So it will be very interesting what the decision that is made.
Giles, are you just generally speaking able to, this might not be a question for tonight, I know I'm asking you a question, but in terms of when you talk about the impact, less than minor, are you able to just share what, because there's what the perceived is, and I understand your question, yeah. Warren, but then there's the actual requirements that council consider, the technical requirements. You would generally talk to that, or we could take that offline. If you had that question, Warren, we could come back to you on that if Giles is unable to answer right now.
Well, I think the assessment that needs to happen is actually looking at what's proposed in the subdivision. The assessment is not considering and can never consider under the RMA what might be in a house in the future or what type of house it is. It is an assessment of a subdivision to enable housing to occur. We haven't done an integrated consent that includes both the housing and the thing, because we haven't made the decisions as to what sizes some of the houses may need to be, whether they're going to be 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, whether there's some needs for some larger families. Those are future decisions, so we can't get into that at the moment. And so the assessment is purely about, does this subdivision, do these sections work? Is the infrastructure that's provided sufficient to do it? And those questions, I feel, would be asked is he in the positive for the application, because we've provided a whole pile of information about that. And yeah, so that's where it's at the moment. It's not a question about what the house is, what the house looks like, how big the house is, or even who lives in the house. That is not part of this resource consent application at all.
Does the decrease in...
Just add a little bit, Renee, on that one? First of all, when we talk about council, because we are part of it, we cannot do the resource consent. So we're the same as anyone. We're providing information, and it's mainly the engineering side of it that we've looked at. So we've been looking at the water, wastewater, stormwater, traffic. We have provided information on that. And a number of years ago, we were well aware that Ohakune development was being constrained by the services. So that's why we've invested in the infrastructure. We did modelling to see where the choke points or constraints might be, and we've been working on those to remove those. So this development and the other developments that are needed in Ohakune, we do not want to hold them up because of infrastructure. So we're spending millions on doing that. But in this particular application, because we're a party, we will not be part of that decision. That will be an independent decision made under the assessments. But from an engineering point of view, council believes that there is no issue from this development.
Who's the independent planner on this?
Sorry, Jason, I didn't quite hear that question.
Who is the independent planner?
Giles?
It's Grant Eccleston's been engaged by council to be the independent planner, so he's not a council contractor per se. He is sitting there in independence as a planner to assess the application.
And in terms of that assessment, does he make the final call on the resource consent being granted?
Well, his first call will be made about whether he feels it needs to be publicly notified or limited notified or non-notified. So that will be one of his decisions he makes first. And then he'll go through, after doing that assessment, he will also be collecting all the stuff where he's asking council to confirm that the engineering is right and anything like that. Then he'll make a decision, ultimately, assuming that it gets to that point, that and any conditions in his decision. So that's the process under the RMA. It would be exactly the same process if the council was doing it. It just happens in this particular case, because council are a party, and being their land, this independent person actually does it.
Has he carried out work for the council previously?
I'd have
to pass that to Clive.
Yes, all I could say on that is when we have any kind of consent that we need an independency from it. I think is it Tonkin and Taylor that he's from? Is that from another company? Right. As I said, there is a number of people that we use when they're either large scale or we need independence. So I wasn't part of that decision choosing who it was. It was done to make sure it was totally independent.
So in previous years, I've received revenue from the council. So I would say they'd be looking forward to receiving revenue in the future. So how impartial would their decisions be?
Warren, I think, can I just part this question? Because, like I say, you're welcome to send an email through and we can answer what we can answer. I'm just really mindful there is a lot of questions that we need to get through with limited time for everybody. One is around the walkway, so the existing walkway. The question is it going to be retained? So there was the slide before that showed the walkway. Just want to chat through that really briefly, Giles.
Yeah, so the walkway is being there will be a walkway in from Snowmass. There will effectively be almost 2 walkways in the future, because there'll be one along, there'll be an opening up of the one that's further down into Snowmass, but it's a slight alteration to it, which will be able to utilise the footpath on the street and street lighting, and a much more stable base, and leaving it behind the back fences of properties is not a good outcome that could actually be designed for. So from a subdivision basis, the fact that it will come out and be on the street front along the front of the houses, like walking any other footpath, is much safer for people, and that's the goal. But yes, that link is still there. It's a critical link. We've identified it, and ultimately there will be actually a second link further down, so there'll be more chances to walk across, and so we're encouraging more pedestrians. I mean, this is a great place for us for development. I mean, people can walk to the Carrot Park, they can walk to the supermarket. They're all walkable spaces. So just a great outcome, really.
So you're confirming. So sorry. So you're confirming the walkway that bounds on Kainga Way and the development is going to be retained, or is that walkway going to be consumed into the development and a new one taken over?
If you show the slide, maybe again, you'll be able to see where the walkway detours through the residential subdivision. So it will be detoured.
It's going to be detoured.
Can just bring up that slide ever so briefly. Again, I'm very mindful there's a lot of questions here. So let's just bring that up briefly and have a look at that, because one of the other components, just while we're doing that, just pop it into presentation mode, is around I can see the Carrot Park's a hot topic of discussion in our chat function. And there was a question around thoroughfare from Tate Drive and impacts of the thoroughfare through to the park. I assume you mean from the road. I'm just quickly scanning these questions.
What's from the road, yeah.
Yeah. So, Giles, I'll let you talk to the walkway part first, and then maybe you want to have a chat about the thoroughfare to the Carrot.
So the only actual dedicated piece of the walkway is the very short piece coming in off Snowmass, the lot 8, which is about 80 odd square metres of title. Then the rest of the walkway is on the same title as this whole development site that Ruapehu District Council owns, the 9.5 hectares. It's not a dedicated walkway at that point. It's just a piece of gravel along in the paddock. So what we're doing is picking that part up, moving it to a much better route and a concreted path that'll be all weather, all purpose, and lit. So that's it. I mean, it's a dog leg of probably 20 metres, and then it carries along, but leaving a path behind the back of those properties and leaving it there would not be an acceptable outcome from a safety point of view.
Sorry, Charles, are you saying in the picture that you've got up here in the top right-hand corner, where it's got the yellow arrow that is the current walkway, are you saying that that's actually going to stay there?
No, that's going to be 7 new homes that you'll have to walk past the driveways of those 7 new homes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, to get to the Carrot Park. So kids
and you'll walk upon footpaths with lighting at night and concrete and a much safer environment than actually having fences, back fences.
Who says it's currently unsafe, Charles? Who says it's currently unsafe?
Well, at night it's not lit at the moment. I walk through it quite regularly.
Yep, so do I, and my kids do as well.
Has anyone addressed the issue that the Carrot Park is like a massive tourist attraction with so many kids? There are so many kids walking around there that having cars accessing like 144 houses accessing Tia Drive is just going to be like crazy.
Yeah. Can we just touch on that, Thorough, because that comes back to a number of questions we've got in our chat. So, Giles, just want to chat about that because that's a common question.
Yeah. Data Drive is capable of supporting the development of the first 44 lots. So there's not an issue of a traffic safety issue and thing. It's been assessed by a traffic engineer, and that is being evaluated and looked at. In terms of the future, when you talk about 140,
see that evaluation.
it's in the traffic reports, and I know that most of you manage, or a number of you, have downloaded all the reports from council. So if you haven't got those links, it's there. There is a traffic assessment. And in terms of the future development, when it might get to 140 lots or something in the future, which is not something that I'm going to talk about because we're not involved in it, but that would may necessitate an access out to another road, out to the Radahi Ohakune road. But at the moment, this is fine. The traffic on Tato Drive is not running through the car parking area of the Carrot Park. There's a separate thing. And I mean, this is one of the reasons why I want to be here. That these family homes that we're proposing here will have children that live in them that will want to use the Carrot Park just like any other child.
Yeah, thank you, Giles. Hey, and again, happy to go through more specific detail. There is a number of homes for sale. We know that. If there is an opportunity where there are homes that meet our requirements, and we look at things such as what people need, I'm talking about public housing here. I'm not talking about long-term worker rentals or affordable. We look at, are they warm and dry Homestar 6 standards? Are they suitable what our whānau actually need? Are they maintainable? Because we want to be able to set that whānau up so that they can live well in their homes. A lot of these properties, and I'm talking generally because I'm not going to go into level of detail here tonight, do not meet those standards at the moment. However, if there is...
that's not true. Sorry, Renee. You need to spend a bit more time looking around the real estate market up on the Central Plateau. I agree. Because you can buy on market rather than do a giant white elephant development like you're proposing here. It'd be far cheaper for you to do that. There's only 12 families on MSD waiting list, which you finally disclosed to us after days of waiting for it. So this is just a huge white elephant, and Ruapehu District Council has got their snout into public money, and they've decided that they need to spend 100%. It. Absolute waste of time, and it's a disgrace how you've treated us all.
Look, Hamish and Barry, I appreciate it. And look, you have written to me and we have come back to as much as possible. I'm really mindful that we do have other people who do need some airtime. Really.
Okay, well, you let them talk. You've talked for ages. Just zip it and let them talk.
No, hold on a second, Hamish. I was just acknowledging the questions that are in the chat.
Renee, I'd actually like to hear what other people in this forum have to say, especially those like Barry, because I have not had any visibility of this. As a neighbour, as a resident, I've had no visibility. It's been really poor. Well, there hasn't been any consultation, and thank you for acknowledging that. So I'd actually like to hear them speak, because they're knowledgeable about this and they represent me, who knows nothing about this whole process and is experiencing Kainga Ora issues in my own community as well as now here in Ohakune. So please, could you, with all respect, be quiet and let them talk?
Yeah, completely agree.
Can I just
Clive would be
say something?
interested to see your projections on the population growth, please. You keep going on about population growth, Clive.
Look, we need to do this one at a time, otherwise we will need to mute people because we're talking over each other. So we actually need to be quite respectful. And I take on board, it's got Matt Ray, but I don't know who is talking.
Renee, what I would like to know, I don't disagree with what you said about public housing, but what I'd like to know is where you're going to get the resources for Ohakune, like for doctors, nurses, because you're going to need to increase your community nurses. God knows you don't have enough community nurses up there as it is, and teachers and everywhere else. Like you're growing this population, but should you not grow the infrastructure and the resources to support that population? And that I cannot be seen being done in Ohakune. Sorry.
Can I just make a comment, please? What you're talking about is a different process. We've been going on what I call a spatial planning process now for a few years, and that looks at exactly what you're saying. We knew Ohakune was growing. We knew it needed, whether it's medical, schooling, all those issues, and we need a good footprint to make sure it grows properly, because it wasn't designed to be double its size. So that is a different process that we've engaged people in, and the enlargement or the growth of Ohakune in Tate Drive and other development, because it's not the only development plan. There's quite a few hundred other developments planned at the moment. And what we want to do is to make sure it's done properly for the future. And that means talking to health and everyone else as well. So this Tay Drive itself, with 44 houses, isn't going to trigger all these issues, but we do need to address all these issues for the future, because we want Ohakune to remain a really great place to live in.
Where was the original funding for this designated for?
Yeah, Clive, that's my question too. I mean, you sent out a pretty distressing letter to us as residents, telling us that rates needed to increase by 24%, but you only put rates up by 7%. 6% of that is going off to fund your increased interest costs in the environment. My question is, how's this development going to impact council finances, capital, operational, whatever, and are rates going to have to increase to fund this development as well? Because you're going to need more water treatment, sewage treatment, all of those auxiliary services.
Without just talking about it on that there, first of all, the policy of housing is that there's no cost to the ratepayer. And what you've got to remember is when we're saying we didn't consult, we did consult on this about over 3 years, 2 years, and all the rest of it on this. We had public meetings in Ohakune about housing.
Yeah, whereabouts? Whereabouts? I've heard nothing about this, and I've owned a property in Ohakune for 5 years.
And I haven't heard it.
I've never been consulted, Clive. Clive, I've never been consulted. Nobody's ever asked me about this at all.
Most of your population
I've been in for 12 years, and I've never been consulted about any.
I've never been consulted.
One by one, please.
I've never been consulted.
There's a general thing here, right? Consultation 3 years ago, yet none of us have been consulted until the last couple of weeks.
Can I just say something? If we're going to bring in all these people, we know that there's a shortage of nurses and there's a shortage of doctors. So where do you think you're going to get these people from?
So I just want to add to where I was heading before. So it's not Kainga Ora's role necessarily to make that happen. That's not our function. But what our function is to support thriving, sustainable communities. So this development and the feedback that we're seeking enables to have that community voice.
Say there's been some misinformation about the lack of need. There is significant housing need at this time for local residents within this region. I know of at least 35 families who are seeking accommodation. We have overcrowding, we have substandard housing, and that is a big part of our daily work, is trying to support families who want to stay here. So we're not talking at Ngati Rangi perspective, we're not talking about bringing in a huge population. This is a population that lives here and is seeking, they want to have a right to be able to have safe, warm, dry, affordable housing as much as anyone. And so I just wanted to share that there is sometimes the state will not have the same information, and so just sharing different information from our perspective.
And you're absolutely right, and everybody does deserve to have that way to be able to live their lives. Absolutely. That is not, I think if you read the room, potentially you'll realise that that's actually not the concern. The concern is not the need, the concern is the placement. I would imagine that everybody here agrees with the need, and for the opportunity for Ohakune to meet that need is fantastic. If it brings more life into Ohakune, fantastic. This is not about that. This is about zero consultation on the placement of this that is likely to have a massive impact on ratepayers that have been there for a very long time.
Oh, bullshit.
I know. Can you hear us, Jenny and Mike?
I feel like that, Renee. You knew there was going to be a great deal of interest. Why did you only limit this to an hour?
Yeah. No, but we'll just waste 5 minutes, hopefully, right now.
Yeah.
Just in response to Helen, I'm just wondering if there's substandard housing in town at the moment, and the concern is not the need for warm, safe, dry housing for these families. The concern is around the placement for this. Why doesn't Kainga Ora take this substandard housing knock it down and build 2 houses on each of those properties, which are big properties anyway, and spread the need around the community as it is already.
So can I just answer that quickly before I'm sure Clive, Giles or Helen may want to also respond to this. We need to remember that this is a Ruapehu District Council piece of land as part of the shovel-ready funding that they applied for. And so Kainga Ora has come in to support that approved funding application. So that's our role in this particular function. Now we're focused on the public.
Turn my video off and mute too.
Sorry, Warren, are you able to pop yourself on mute for the moment?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you so much. So we do need to remember that this is where this has come from, and as we mentioned right from the get-go, this was part of Ruapehu District Council's housing strategy. And this piece of land is zoned residential and has been identified. And I appreciate the comments that you're popping in here around consultation. I can't answer that. We can go to Clive to answer that question around where was that consultation, who was consulted with. So we've been brought in to support the shovel ready to make this land buildable through that subdivision infrastructure. And part of that agreement is to build these proposed 44 homes, and that breakdown is based on Helen just put it quite nicely, there is an underbelly of need out there for a variety of housing, which is why we've proposed this. Clive, Giles, Helen, did you want to touch on that any further?
I'd like to just make one point, is that this council wanted to address housing needs. That is not just public housing. We didn't just go to Kainga Ora and say build a whole load of social or public housing. We knew there was 3 needs. One was some social housing. We knew there was a shortage on that, and that was where we wanted Kainga Ora to address it. But we also knew people wanted to be able to buy their homes. But Renee talked about it. There's good families out there that just can't get into the market as it is at the moment. So we wanted to help that. And also businesses were saying they were being constrained when they wanted to bring people in to grow their business or to service their business. There wasn't the accommodation because a lot of it was being used for tourists and other people coming in. So council's strategy, which we consulted on a few years ago and we had meetings on, was based on addressing those 3 groups of needs. It wasn't just social. We're not a social housing provider. That's what we rely on good partners like Kainga Ora to address. So I think we're getting carried away. This is not a public housing development. This is trying to address real housing needs in Ohakune to help grow our economy and address it. You need people to manage the tourists and service the tourists. They need affordable accommodation just the same. So I'm really strong on this. There is those needs out there, and council felt it was part of its role to be able to try and partner with people to help it with it.
But you've also been very quiet about the whole thing. If you've been planning this for 3 years on that piece of land, this funding, is this a big hoo-ha so that Megan Woods can jump around and be like, yeah, look, we built some extra houses, and you've kept it very quiet and secretive.
I think the secretive side of it is that it could only proceed with government funding, and it's only recently that government have confirmed that. So up till then, we had been looking at Ohakune for the future of Ohakune with all the services, but that site was not identified definitely until government agreed to be able to partner with us on it. So we've been constrained by, it's no use going consulting on a bit of land that the government have not committed to.
Yeah,
so
but you didn't.
It's only
Clive?
Yep.
So you're bringing people into the area. So rather than spread it out through Ratahi, Tamaranui, and your other part of your district, you're trying to greet all these people and put them into one area, correct?
No, that wasn't what we said, and I think Helen covered that. We're talking about existing needs in Ohakune.
So
we don't need to go outside Ohakune to address the needs. There is a demand. You talk to developers, they've got hundreds of developments planned for the people who can afford. They're not constrained by affordability. Ohakune is growing. It's a desirable place to live in.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge that based, and again, I'm not from Ohakune, but our engagement sessions over the past few.
Like housing.
Sorry, can I need to butt in there. I'm a builder and a developer. You cannot build houses for the price they're on the market in Ohakune at the moment. Some of those houses, and there's a lot of double glazed, well insulated, very desirable, livable houses, but you could not build for the price they're on the market. So I struggle with that.
And they would be immediately available too. So
they'll just pick up off the shelf. So
Hey,
you're going to do a development that's going to be, they'll be well more expensive than what's actually currently on the market. So that's what I struggle with. And we're going to end up picking up the cost of this.
And that's what I can't understand. If workers' accommodation like WPI or whoever they are going to purchase these homes, why would they do so? Are they going to get a cheaper rate to purchase these homes, or are they going to be, paying market rate when they could purchase a house in Ohakune right now? That's a corporate company you're giving special privileges to house their staff. They could go and buy a house on the market right now. That's another question I have.
That's not what I said at the beginning, though, Barry. What I mentioned at the beginning is and again, this is detail we need to work through. Again, we're not even at that stage yet. We're proposing this. We've got to work through, as Giles went through the development timeframes. We've got a subdivision infrastructure.
I totally understand.
Let me just finish. So what I mentioned is it's highly likely that we'll have a third party, and we don't know who that is, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be that doesn't make sense. Practically, we would have different employers competing against each other. So we've got to work through that detail. So it's highly likely to be a third party who can retain those homes for the purpose in which they're intended for, which is the long-term worker rentals. Now, team, I am really conscious of time.
It is a very one-way conversation, though. It's going to happen.
Yeah, Barry,
it's not answering our questions. It's just trying to make us happy about this.
Renee, can you take the questions from the chat and answer them and send them out to us?
Yep, you can send it to me and I'll distribute it.
I don't have everybody's email addresses.
If you send them to me,
Barry.
If you're able to email us, so we have your email address, that would be super helpful, because there is a comment in the chat function around how we are contacting people, and it's really difficult when some people don't live in the area, who are living elsewhere and come to Ohakune. So if you can share your email addresses via the email function that we've provided, we'll get that in the chat. Oh, thank you, Lauren has popped that in the chat already. Then we can stay in contact with you. So we have got a Word document of all of these questions, but again, it would be helpful if you could actually email us so we have your contact details. Do you have anything?
One last question for Clive. Clive, could we have a meeting as residents with you, a Zoom call directly with you without Kainga Ora? Because we would like to discuss these matters directly with you.
I think, first of all, there is another forum where we're looking at the future of Ohakune. And we meet quite regularly, and I think a lot of those issues are better addressed through there.
No, but I think if you're telling us that we need to attend each one of those Zoom calls that you have, watch them for 2.5 hours, because what's been done here has been under the radar. Like most of your ratepayers live, outside of Ohakune. We all have mortgages on these properties that our land values are going to go down for sure. You look at stats in Australia and stuff. So this is affecting us as ratepayers, and we need to know how Ruapehu District Council has viewed our concerns. Not Kainga Ora. We don't want to talk about. We don't want to speak to them. You're the one that's made the decision here to sell this piece of land to Kainga Ora without directly talking to your ratepayers.
So Barry, we'll note that down. And again, you've got my email. You've been emailing me, so pop that through. So we've got that on record, and we can go from there. But look, I want to thank you all for your time this evening. Again, happy to pick this up again if we need to. More than happy to do that. Again, encourage you to pop your contacts through so we can stay in touch with you. And look, like I say, we didn't get to a number of questions, so apologies, but happy to come back to you via that email component. Thank you for your time this evening. Take care. Did you want to close our hui for us, please?
Kia ora, tēnā tātou. Kei runga, kei raro, kei roto, kei wa o au me ui e tai ki e.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you.